shelter in place. And this session is on supportive listening. So if that's what you were hoping for, great to see you. If that was something you thought was different, stay with us and see if you get something out of it. So I'm going to be your facilitator today. I know a few of you already. Barbara Lipson, and I am, my role is the Director of Organizational Effectiveness Services at SEEDS. I'm also oversee the community programs as well. And as I said, I'll be here talking about supportive listening. We are supported by our wonderful programs coordinator, Selena Gould. Hi, Selena. Thank you so much for being here. And do you want to talk a little bit more about some housekeeping items before we get started?
Sure. Thank you, Barbara. Welcome, everyone. We're so grateful to have you virtually and in community with us. Just a few housekeeping things to get us started. If you can make sure, it looks like everyone has themselves muted to start with. And then if you can click on your icon, you'll see that there are a few 3 dots in the corner of your image, and you can rename yourself. We ask that you please rename yourself with first name, preferred gender pronouns, and your location that you're currently at. And then another housekeeping item is that we will be recording this session for internal and external training purposes. If you would not like to be recorded, we ask that you please turn off your video before we get the session started. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Selena. One thing we're doing too to start off our meetings is just a land acknowledgement. Selena will be putting in the group chat. If you don't have your group chat on, please turn that on as well, because we'll be supplementing some of what I'm talking about in the group chat, and then you'll be participating a little bit through the group chat as well. So the land acknowledgement we are using goes like this, that we're gathered on the unceded land of the Chochenyo and Ohlone peoples. And I ask you to join me in acknowledging the Chochenyo and Ohlone community, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. Because SEEDS acknowledges that it was founded upon exclusions and erasures of many indigenous peoples, including those on whose our land organization is, whose land our organization is located, and many of us are sitting on now. And for folks who are not on the same land, you can look on the link that Selena just put up, and you could kind of see what land you are on also, just to honor those who went before us. And because at SEEDS, we're always trying to be real about power and privilege and positionality. So always keeping that in mind, and that's relevant when we're doing supportive listening too. So a quick overview again of who SEEDS is. For those of you who don't know about us, we've been around for over 35 years. We had primarily started as a mediation organization, and part of that included training on mediation and conflict resolution. We brought into a lot of different topics around communication, power dynamics, et cetera, all things involved in dialogues for people. We provide services in a lot of different modalities: mediation, training, facilitation, restorative practices. So we engage with folks with a lot of different tools. The agenda for today is basically we're going to do some listening activities, and we will be breaking up into pairs for you to be practicing yourselves. Most of you actually will be probably very familiar with what we've done and may even feel like, hey, wait, this isn't even new. But that's the whole point about listening, right? It's not new. It's something we do all the time. And if we actually all probably know a lot about listening, about supporting people through listening. And it's really a matter of just refreshing and practicing those skills. I've been doing this work for a long time. I do it every day in a very intentional way because it's my work. And yet I always need reminders and refreshing to remember to practice what I know. So Also just wanted to remind you that one of the agreements we often use in our meetings is expect and accept lack of closure. So this is only an hour, so we will be having conversations that get interrupted. We'll just be touching on topics. And so just to normalize that, that's a part of this kind of a workshop. We're just kind of getting a little taste and a quick review. So to talk about supportive listening, oh, before I continue, I just wanted to check about who's on the call. We've had people, more and more people joining in. So what I wanted to do, there's too many people, too short a time to really introduce everyone. But if folks could just take a second and then in the group chat, just check in with yourself. What are 1, 2, 3 feeling words? Because we want to think about feelings, because that's always at the root of our relational work. And for sure, for supportive listening, we're supporting feelings probably. So what are 1 to 3 feeling words that describe you during this shelter in place, or maybe just checking in with yourself right in this moment? Go ahead and type 1, 2, 3 feeling words that describe you in the group chat. I'll probably read out a few of them just so we can kind of check in with everybody and see where everyone's at. So take a second to do that. Yeah, so rough, grounded and hopeful, surreal, slow, unsure, anxious, relaxed, excited, sometimes bored, grateful, overwhelmed, anxious, tired, anxious, wanting to go to yoga, nervous, surreal, hopeful. Certain themes are emerging. Grounded, grateful, pent up. Waiting, needing more movement, grateful. So keep adding. I'm going to let folks continue to read those too. And I think it kind of paints a picture, proud of us, awesome. Paints a picture of all of the range of emotions that people are feeling, and also some of the feelings that overlap, right? Calm, present, adapting, awesome. So when I think again about supportive listening and what is it, it's really thinking about the quality of our listening. And then I wonder, why is this subject attractive to people? And what came up for me is that I'm actually interacting with a lot more people than I usually do, in spite of the separations. People are reaching out to each other in ways that, that are different from before. And so I'm engaging in a lot of conversations. And so I actually have been thinking a lot about supportive listening, because there is so much going on for people. So some of the things that came up for me when I thought about who and what are we supporting with our listening, when I think about the who, it's friends, family, people we're sheltering with, coworkers, and also really maybe some of the people that we're interacting with as we do go outside, go shopping, what other tasks that we're having to do as part of our day-to-day. And then what are we supporting in the people that we're engaging with? We're supporting their experiences and their feelings, right? Checking in. I know there's been a lot of checking in about what's happening for you, just on logistics. How are you coping? What's your day-to-day look like? Are you working? Are you not working? Do you have children at home? Are you alone? Are you with people that you know and love? Are you with people you don't know very well? Do you feel safe? So there's a lot of different experiences that everyone's having, and I'm noticing that that sometimes is creating a little bit of tension as people are not having a shared experience. So we're making assumptions, or we are sharing things that actually might activate someone else because they have a really different experience, right? Also anxiety, worry, and fear. We've seen some of those feelings pop up. And so people are having some really intense feelings in that category. And that's a lot to hold, especially when we are maybe matching those feelings ourselves. Also in the category of frustration, irritation, anger, right? That comes in a lot of ways. It can come with the big picture. It can come between people, it can come around the situation we're in. All kinds of ways that range of emotions can come up. People are struggling with mental health. Some people are really having some mental health breakdowns. And that's something that I think many of us want to support and can be really confusing about how we do that. And then even contentment. Some people are feeling, have some good feelings about the shelter in place. It's working for some folks in some ways, some of the time, right? So just to qualify that, but that can be also complex when other people aren't matching that same experience, right? So those are some of the things that I was thinking of. And I wanted to try to have a few people share out when you were attracted to this topic, supportive listening, what were some of the things that you were interested in addressing? So maybe we can hear from maybe 2 or 3 people, and Selena, maybe you can help me. We can't really see everybody, so maybe if you just turn off your mute and try to see if a couple people, 2, 3 people will share. Maya, Robert.
I could start off.
Okay, great.
So I think the first thing that comes up is just how to navigate both sharing a space with partners who might have kind of different approaches to this. And then also, I just moved into a new house, so March 1st, like meeting new roommates, but also navigating how now every choice you make affects the choices they make, and also how to kind of balance being there for each other and also kind of providing space when you don't know people too well.
Yeah, so some complex dynamics that you're trying to navigate, and it sounds like complex conversations also that need to happen as people create alignment. And then as people, you talked about partners too, is that people try to get along and create alignment when maybe they're pretty different and approaching things pretty differently. Yeah. Robert, you had.
No, I'm just agreeing, and it's a tender time. You know, I have my mother who's 91 in a care facility, and I'm not even in the same state, and I had to cancel my trip to be here. So it's the moments we get are more tender, and the vulnerability is more obvious.
Yeah, so interacting around the fragility of certain people's experiences. And I think that's one of the things that feels really a wide range, that you're talking about being in close relationship with someone in a very vulnerable, part of the very vulnerable population, right? And then all the barriers and fear that comes up with that. And that's different for everybody. Some people have access and relationships with a lot of folks like that. Some people are themselves part of vulnerable populations, and then other folks don't really have direct connection. So that can make this whole thing feel really different. And that also can interfere with our ability to communicate and relate in ways, again, across that difference. Is there anyone else who would like to share, when you're thinking about supportive communication, what was coming up for you around that topic? How about Kasai?
Yeah, thank you. For me, what even made me sign up for this is I'm a manager for a youth program. And so I really wanted to get some insight, I think, about supporting my staff while we still need to be supporting the young people and the families we work with and being sensitive to them, but also, of course, the population we're working with and serving. Because that's been really challenging, I think, for us as.
Sorry, your sound went out. I didn't hear. I can't really hear. I couldn't hear the last part of what you said, but so it sounds like again, like working with youth, and I think that's true for a lot of folks in the workplace. You have your client base, and then you also have the internal folks that you're working with, and how to really communicate with both of them and the different needs that they have. So people who are doing direct service right now, it's even more intense as you're getting sort of a secondary experience of how things have intensified for the primary folks that you're serving, right? So all of those complicated and more highly escalated feelings. And Allison, it looked like you wanted to say something too. You're still muted.
All right. Yeah, I also work with youth. I'm a high school teacher, and I'm communicating with 180 kids every day. And although we're not having as much face-to-face, I also have 2 teenage children at home and my husband. And I feel like the emotions are super raw. I feel like luckily we have a little bit more time and space together. It would be really nice to try to cultivate healthier communication. And I think listening is number one. So I know that in a highly stressed situation like we're under now, we can often trigger each other unknowingly. And I feel like if we're using strategic listening techniques, then we can restore some of the relationship aspect of this time. Because I think that'll make us healthier and stronger as we recover from this. So I'm trying to take this opportunity to sort of hone in on my own skill set and try to improve my listening skills, both as a family member and as a professional.
Mm-hmm. Right, so all the dual hats that we wear, right? And then for you, there's a lot of teen-centric communications that you're involved in as you have students, and then you have your own family members at home. And that communication being sort of at the heart of sustaining connection and relationships, both for getting through this time and then also for our recovery after. So yeah, one of the things that before we go into listening, just want to remind you, this is part of a series. So we're focusing on the listening, but just to pitch ahead to another topic is kind of managing the emotional management, right? And so self-management of emotions is really at the heart of our ability to show up as a good listener. And I'm not going to go into all of those techniques right now, but do just kind of want to name that that's really one of the primary barriers to our ability to get along with others is our own feelings. Because when we feel calm, we feel resilient and resourceful. When we feel peaceful, again, we are able to hold space for others in ways that are greater than when we're having our own reactivity. So I'm not going to go into that reactivity too much in this session because we're going to talk about listening. But again, that's kind of a foundation. So none of this is going to really matter if you're in a highly activated state. And so that's one of the things too, again, the topic isn't self-care today, but self-care is also really, really important for all of us, especially the more we want to show up for other people, the more we have to check into our own ability to be able to actually hold space. So one of the things I always think about to be a good listener is presence and patience so that we have empathy. And we can't really do that when we are very needy ourselves because we're highly activated. So that's just a tough balancing act in these stressful times when everybody sort of needs each other and needs help from each other. But making sure that you are able to be present when you are offering somebody listening or letting them know that you are not going to be able to do a good job listening if until another time. So redirecting somebody at the time and place is really key for being able to do a good job listening. So I want to shift us into a little bit of activity. Again, most of you are probably familiar with these activities, but I think it's going to help us center and remember all the things that we already know about listening. So Selena's going to help us by breaking us up into small groups. And so she's going to break us up actually just into pairs. And you're just going to have 1 minute for this quick activity. I'd like you to try to follow the directions the best you can. They're hard to follow. And I would like you to, so this is just going to be 1 minute, and you are going to share the story of a dream vacation. It could be real vacation you had or an imaginary vacation you really want if you could. And so you're just going to take 1 minute to share a story of your dream vacation. Again, Selena's going to break you up, and so you'll have one partner. I think folks who are here by phone cannot, in the breakout rooms, I think you can only be a listener, but you could also contribute in the chat for this particular 1 minute piece. You won't probably want to do that, but maybe we'll have you do that in the later versions. And yes, you're going to be sharing your stories at the exact same time. That's the hard part to do, but it's just for 1 minute. So Selena's going to divide you up for your 1 minute, share at the same time, dream vacation you had or you wanted. And it'll just probably pretty suddenly bring you back to the main group without warning. So just to be mindful about that. See you in a minute.
I'm wondering if it's listing you as the host of the meeting. I don't have access to the breakout groups for some reason.
Okay. So I'll assign people into
2 to 3. Sorry, I apologize.
That's okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay, so we're going to assign you. Good luck. And then where do I? Okay, sorry for this technical difficulty. Selena, can you talk me through? I'm not seeing how it gets me to start it.
Folks are going into their breakout rooms as we speak.
Okay, I didn't put a time on it. And I couldn't put the phone. So it didn't give me an option to put a time.
Yeah,
Hi, Nina.
You'll just end the breakout, sorry. You'll just end the breakout rooms
Okay.
when they're done. I apologize, I'm not sure
That's too bad. Okay.
why this happened, but. Can you see if everyone is in a breakout room with a person?
Can really interfere. I want to get to you in a second, Robert. I also, someone's saying, I know I'm not supposed to say this, but I prefer when people are talking at the same time in some ways, because it's like what I grew up with. People talk over, but we're all listening. It's not ideal for all situations, but it feels more familiar and I feel more connection for the right situation. So acknowledging that that layered talking at the same time, there is a cultural component to that, right? Some broader cultures do that, some family cultures do that, some regional cultures do that, some individuals do that, and folks who have that background tend to be better at being able to track conversation through multiple people talking, and it can feel good. We always just remind you again that when things get real and get really important or get more intensified, it isn't, as this person said, in certain situations, it doesn't work as well. And so just a reminder that there is a time and place, that this isn't like always or never, right? Someone else said, I was trying to listen to her and then stop talking. So trying to listen and talk can really interfere with what you're trying to say yourself. And then Robert, you had something that you wanted to say.
Keith's side was really nice and sweet, because this is my first Zoom time. I just downloaded Zoom for this, so it took a little extra moment. It was also sweet that just happy accident we had the starting of the same kind of story. But I realized that there's a visual component, at least for us who are those who are sighted, that listening is not just strictly an auditory skill, that there's a lot of other senses going into it.
Right, listening is so much about body language. language. And that's what they say about communication, that it's actually primarily around body language. But body language also does include voice. So I appreciate you qualifying it too around people who are sight oriented. And I also have talked to someone who does a lot of phone work, and they really they're so aware of the nuance and tone that they can really pick up via voice too. So again, acknowledging that voice, volume, tone, there's a lot communicated in that aspect of body and body language as well. Yeah. So when we think about talking at the same time, there's the obvious when we're actually literally talking at the same time in the way that you all just did. And then there's another version of when we're sort of talking at the same time that looks different. Can anyone share what you think that might be? You can unmute if you want to share. Robert? Okay. Anyone else want to share? Rasa?
I see it sometimes when people are talking over each other or trying to make a point.
Mm-hmm. Trying to make a point, talking over each other. Usually, again, we're pretty activated when that's happening, right? We are so focused on what we want to say. That's kind of what the instruction of this activity was. And that also happens when we're really activated by what the other person is saying. And that activation in this context often can be from our own empathy or our own compassion fatigue. So when someone's sharing things that are hard for them, I know that sometimes for me, I might want to get into a fix-it mode, or I might really unconsciously want to shut that down because I can't handle any more pain. So that's, again, where the self-management comes. If you're really letting someone share with you in a vulnerable way and you're not able to handle it, you can actually really engage with them in ways that can feel pretty negative to them. So it's really important, again, to be self-aware enough to know, and especially in these hard times, whether you have the capacity right now to take in someone's painful communication. And also, even if you're just doing that in your mind, right? So that can happen in these times when folks have been talking about alignment and different experiences and people, you know, ranges of conflict. It can be like low level, it can be higher level. If someone's saying something that I disagree with, I might be keeping my mouth shut, but my brain is very actively arguing with them. I might be just waiting for them to stop talking so that I can tell them how wrong they are or what is different about my experience or solving their problem or any other kind of judgments or anything that I'm really thinking about besides curiosity and understanding, seeking to understand what's going on for them. So that's really at the root of good listening, is to be, again, really present and really patient. So good listening, it takes patience. You all already know that. And so that's why I'm saying this is really about reinforcing what you already know. It means waiting and letting them talk, right? Letting them say what's going on for them and not interfering with their sharing, not by asking questions, because then that directs what they're sharing to what you want to know about. And there are certain kinds of questions, more open-ended, encouraging questions that build on what they've already said, can be helpful for someone to get out what they're trying to say. But other kinds of more curious questions or close-ended questions can direct them to respond regarding what you're interested in, which in the end is not going to de-escalate them or help them feel as heard, as if you really just sit back and let them direct the story to where they really want it to go. So I wanted to give you an opposite opportunity for sharing that feels a little bit different from what you've just been doing. And so we're going to have you in pairs again. We had set this up for Selena, who has more experience with breakout groups. I didn't even really learn how to do it since I assumed she was going to do it. So since I'm doing it, it may not go as smoothly. My intention is to set you back up with the person you were talking with. But if that doesn't happen, then you'll be meeting a new person. And one of you is going to go first, and we're going to bring you back and forth a lot in quick succession. So just bear with us around that, but it helps to break up the activity. So the first person who's going to speak is going to tell your story, and you're going to take about 4 minutes to share a story of a conflict that you're in, or maybe even something you're worried about, something that's going to have some emotional content. Listener, you are going to not really respond. I want you to practice another extreme. That was extreme for us to be talking at the same time. And we want you to practice not talking at all. So you can see what that might be like. And then in the end, you'll be able to find a nice middle ground. So this time you're just listening. You're not saying anything. Maybe you could say, tell me more, to encourage your speaker. And then we're going to give you a chance to share out 3 feelings that you heard the speaker say. So what the listener is doing is you're tracking feelings that the speaker is including in their story. They could be overt feelings like, oh, I was so sad, or I'm anxious, or I was glad. They could be implicit, right? Sounds like you felt actually really hopeless about things, or, you know, something that was implied, but they didn't actually say. So how this is going to go is we're going to put you in your groups for 4 minutes, and then you'll come back to the big group. I will give you the instruction for the listener to share the 3 feelings. We'll put you back in for 2 minutes, then we'll come back, then we'll switch you. So each phase, I'm going to bring you back, give you the instruction, and send you back. So you only have to think about one thing at a time. So everyone could think of their conflict story. Again, as far as conflict goes, or high emotion goes, if it's 0 to 10, 10 is a very emotional story. We want to keep you at about a 5. So something that has enough emotions for the listener to think about, but not so much that it's going to make you feel too upset. So let me try to give you back in the breakout room. So again, with your partner, decide who's going to go first. Take about 4 minutes to share your story. Be brand new, to try to just listen with someone without saying anything. And so when we put it in the larger context, with just the few minutes we have left, when we're talking about supportive listening, what are your takeaways or things you noticed from that last activity? So if you want to share, just turn off your, open up your microphone, and that's one way I can tell that you're ready to share. Cordell, did you want to share?
Yeah, I can make myself a video too. I thought it was interesting to practice reflecting back not just the explicit emotions, but also trying to get to what are the explicit or implicit emotions that didn't necessarily say, you know. So that's interesting to explore that, you know, because it's easy to go with the emotions that they're telling you, and that may be the main focus, but there might be other emotions in there that aren't, you know, explicitly stated. So it's interesting to explore that.
Yeah, and when I think about supportive listening, that's one of the things that we can offer people. That isn't advice. It's not all the other things we think we're offering, but it's like, yeah, I'm hearing you say this, and you know what else I'm hearing you say? That extra listening and understanding that we can only do from the listener point of view. Sometimes we have our own so much going on for ourselves that we're not always tracking everything we're feeling. So to have someone else help us do that can really help move emotions through. It's hard to move them through and let them go if you don't even know you have them. So that's one of the benefits of that listening for the implicit. The other piece just also to highlight is, if you've noticed that I've been reflecting back to all of you when you speak, then that verbal reflection of understanding and tracking helps people really know that you're following what they're saying. Were there any other observations? Maybe we have time for 1 or 2 more that folks had in this context. Robert?
I really enjoyed that. So we took a little while to get on board with the way we were doing it, but it was really great to hear. And you can receive, even over like Zoom, you can receive someone. And I was struck at the very end. This is a very modern kind of idea. This active listening, compassionate listening. Someone used the term earlier. I was not sure I understood strategic listening. But in Japan, when I've lived in Japan, there's a concept called aizuchi, which basically is sort of an active listening idea. And I realized at the end that even though we are kind of quiet, our bodies or an occasional word just sort of comes out like, yeah. And it just, there's a compassionate way of of expressing active listening and care in the person that is it's almost goes unheard in our culture, in Western culture, but I think it is there. And it's however it comes out, I think it's important for it to come out.
Yeah, I think I'm hearing a couple of things in what you said, that there's sort of a quietness that's really required for listening. And again, that's that kind of presence that I was talking about. And then how we communicate that to other people, depending on how we are with them. If we're in person with them, there's all of the aspects of body language. If we're on a video chat with them, there's lesser, but there's still many aspects of body language. When we're on the phone with them, then there's the voice and our tone. I know that sometimes, because I do a lot of intakes with people telling me their conflict, and I can tell when they pause, they're not really sure how that went over. And when I reflect back, so yeah, this is what I heard you say, and this is happening for you, I can hear the relief and the de-escalation when they really feel heard. It really builds connection and trust, and helps them feel really supported. Whether I agree or not, it's not about agreeing, it's about really hearing and really tracking. So just to kind of review the things that I kind of wanted to, if you want to grab a few takeaways, there were 4 things that I identified that I've mentioned already. The first being presence. So being mindful that when you're listening to someone, the more you can stay present to what they're saying and to them, keeping a spotlight on them, really letting them know that you are curious and interested in wanting to hear what they have to say, is really going to go a long way. The second is caring. And that's one I struggle with, especially in conflict. Sometimes one of the parties doesn't actually care. They don't really care about what that other person is saying. They don't really care about their point of view. They're not curious. They don't really care. And that is something that we can get exhausted with when we get compassion fatigue, and we can feel like, I don't really care anymore. I've heard this, you're not doing anything about it, or I don't agree with you. I actually don't care what you have to say. So we want to own that. If that's really how we are, don't fake it and pretend you're listening, because the other person is not going to feel supported. Just be honest and turn the conversation into that. And just say, it's really hard for me to listen to you because you've been telling me that a lot of times and I haven't seen you change. Or it's really hard for me to talk about that right now because I so disagree with you. It sounds like you're really wanting me to hear you, and I'm really having a hard time doing that right now. It's much better to communicate those messages than to try to listen to someone when you don't really care, because they're not going to walk away feeling very held or supported, and you're not going to feel good either. So just being really honest about that caring piece, I think, is important. Same with patience. Being patient is such a key piece of listening. And I think about that for those of you who talked about dealing with youth and dealing with youth in your own home. Sometimes our patience really runs thin. And if you're also having a huge classroom of people that you're just listening one after another, sometimes it can you can feel impatient, but depending on the topic, you can feel impatient. So if you don't have patience, just know that that's going to impact their experience and how well supported they feel. So the more you're tracking that, the less surprised you'll be with the outcomes of your listening activity. And then the final piece is actually the most important, and that's the empathy piece, right? We all know that empathy in so many ways helps us connect with people. It helps us support people. We all love to have empathy and experience that. And that goes way back to our formation as a human being, because empathy communicates attunement. And if I feel that someone is attuned to my needs, then I feel safer because I feel more likely that my needs will be met. That comes from just even our little baby brains start that way. So when we don't feel like people are empathetic or understanding what we're going through, we feel that we're not going to have our needs met, which creates a lot of anxiety in us and creates a lack of trust and a lack of connection. So empathy goes very, very deep in our human experience. So we just have a couple minutes left. So I just want to thank you all for being here for this workshop and helping us to engage and practice in our Zoom workshops. There was another comment too. Someone said that was so much better. I loved it because I felt like we connected. It was rich, and I appreciated best evaluation of my feelings, ones I wasn't aware of. So that really captures what can happen when you have really supportive listening. So just wanting to remind folks that we are still here. We're open for business, for mediation, for coaching, for support around dialogues and communication. You can still reach us in the same ways that you've reached us before. We have, our phone is still receiving messages. Our website is another way that you can connect to us. And then also we have additional workshops coming up on Friday, I think, of this week, and then also next week. And then we also have an RJ in Schools training coming up, so check that out on our website. And thank you all for being here, and we hope to see you again. Thank you for participating in the SEEDS community. Bye, everyone. Good to see you all.
Thank you. Be safe, y'all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks
Bye,
so much.
everyone.
Bye,
Thank
Kasai.
you. Bye.
Bye, Bert.